A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. At that moment, Jesus said, "My Father, Lord of heaven and earth, I am grateful that you hid all this from wise and educated people and showed it to ordinary people. Yes, Father, that is what pleased you. My Father has given me everything, and He is the only one who knows the Son. The only one who truly knows the Father is the Son. But the Son wants to tell others about the Father so that they can know Him too. If you are tired from carrying heavy burdens, come to me and I will give you rest. Take the yoke I give you. Put it on your shoulders and learn from me. I am gentle and humble, and you will find rest. This yoke is easy to bear, and this burden is light." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So, hi there, everyone, on this Feast of St. Francis. So, it's actually not the Feast of St. Francis today. The actual feast day is Monday, October 4th. But at the Casa, we are celebrating the Feast of St. Francis all weekend long. And so, this gospel today, we've actually heard before, not too long ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send us over to look at that reflection, and then I'll be right back with you guys. Have a listen. So this weekend's gospel is all about Jesus reassuring us that He is by our side and that we don't have to be wise and clever for Him to be our friend and to stay close to us. The people that Jesus would be talking to at this point in His ministry, in His life, were largely farmers and people who weren't necessarily known for being educated or smart. They were humble people. They were good people who worked hard and tried to live the best kind of life that they could. And that's all that Jesus wants from us. He just wants us to be the best kind of people that we can be. And so what He's telling them when He's reassuring them that He's going to lighten their load is that He's going to do everything that He can to make things easier for them. And that's what He does for us as well. Now, He talks about something called a yoke. For the yoke I will give you is easy, and the load I will put on you is light. And when you first hear that word, you might be thinking about the yolk that's in an egg, right? Like the orange part of an egg. But this is actually a word that sounds similar, but is spelled differently, and it's Y-O-K-E, yoke. And what He's actually talking about is a piece of equipment or tackle, what we would call tackle or gear, that was attached to oxen or like really big cows that used to pull some of the farming equipment that the farmers used as they were tending their crops. And what it was a big piece of wood that went over the top of the cow's neck and sort of hitched them together and then hitched them to whatever the machinery, maybe the plow that they were pulling or the cart that they were pulling. And obviously you can imagine, especially depending on how heavy it was, the load was that they were carrying, the yoke could feel pretty heavy as well. And so as Jesus was explaining this to the farmers, this is something that they would have really understood. And He was telling them that whatever load they were carrying, He was going to make easier. So I don't think He was talking about an actual load. He wasn't talking about how heavy the sack of potatoes might have been, right? He was talking about the things that are hard for us to carry in life. And what things might you have that are hard to carry in life? Maybe you've been teased or bullied at school and that was really hard. Or maybe you had a family member or a favorite pet that passed away and that was really hard for you to carry, for you to go through. Maybe mom or dad has been stressed and you've seen the stress on their face and you see that they are carrying a heavy load and that makes you feel like you are too. Or maybe it's just as simple as it is summertime and normally during the summer we are traveling and playing and having fun, and this year is just a little bit different and that's hard. It's a heavy burden to carry. Whatever the case is, what Jesus is telling us this week in this week's gospel is that he is here for us and that he will make our burdens lighter if we just ask him to. And how do you do that? How do you ask Jesus to make your load lighter? By praying to him. Exactly right. Just pray to him. Remember, he's your friend. You can talk to him anytime. Let him know what your burdens are, what your load is, and he will help you with it. The other thing that Jesus pointed out in this gospel that I really, really loved is he said that, these things were revealed to people who weren't necessarily smart or clever. A lot of times, the smart people that are around us, those who have had a lot of schooling or education, or they just find themselves to be particularly clever, sometimes they think they know more, even when it comes to a relationship with Jesus. And that is simply not the case. Remember, Jesus was telling this in this week's gospel to farmers, people who didn't have as many smarts necessarily, but that were good and humble and kind. And that's all that Jesus asks for us. He just wants us to be good, humble, and kind. And if we happen to be smart too, well, then that's great. So pray to Jesus. Pray when you feel like you need to talk about a heavy load that you're carrying. And I promise he's going to make it lighter for you. So why do we hear this gospel on the feast of St. Francis? Well, I want you to think about what we talked about in regard to the farmers and the people that Jesus was talking to. They were ordinary people who were good and humble and kind. And that was St. Francis. St. Francis also had a lot of burdens that he carried in his life. His life was not always easy, but he knew that if we turn to Jesus in prayer, that Jesus can ease those burdens, make things easier. And Francis himself did that often. And not only did he do that often, he shared that knowledge, that wisdom with others as well, and taught others how to do that. Francis had many blessings in his life too. He had a really good friend who would make him almond cookies every time she saw him. And he had a whole community of brothers that he was able to build up around him, that he spent his time and his life with serving God. So just remember that any time that things start to feel heavy, be like St. Francis, be good and humble and kind, and then turn to God in prayer, and he will ease your burdens.